The retribution for shrinking his own world and acting foolishly based on wrong thinking has become very great. This is the end of the person I admired. I never thought something like this would happen. My name is Amelia. There were two major turning points in my life during my childhood. The first was my encounter with the banjo. In the 3rd grade, I happened to come across a TV feature about the banjo. I thought it was so cool that I couldn't bring myself to change the channel. Then, the sound that it made enveloped me. The energetic and rhythmic sounds became more and more intense, turning into a torrent. I continued to stare at the TV screen, even after the broadcast had ended. I was captivated by the world of the banjo in a daze. It was then that I decided I would play the banjo too. After convincing my parents, I started attending banjo lessons, beginning my journey with the banjo. It was the start of what would become my lifelong pursuit. By chance, I joined a banjo school of a certain style near my home. The banjo is often used in bluegrass music, a genre influenced by traditional folk music, with varying styles and techniques developed in different regions. Another turning point came suddenly in the 6th grade. About 2 hours after having dinner with my family, I suddenly felt sick and vomited. My eyelids swelled, my throat itched, and I felt difficulty breathing. Alarmed by my sudden condition, my parents called an ambulance, and I was taken to the hospital for treatment. It turned out I had developed a shellfish allergy. Indeed, we had crab and shrimp for dinner. Boiled crab and shrimp chili, my favorites, made for an exciting dinner. Allergies can sometimes suddenly manifest after being dormant. My favorite foods had become my worst enemies in that moment. This allergy, showing typical immediate type food allergic reactions, persisted into adulthood without developing any tolerance. Eating these foods was essentially ingesting poison. Despite longing for my once favorite foods, I couldn't return to them. Regular allergy tests showed no signs of improvement. Checking ingredients before meals became a tedious task. While my diet faced restrictions, my banjo skills improved significantly. I was a 3rd grader when I started playing, and when I was in the 6th grade, I brilliantly won 1st place in the junior division of a contest. For middle school, I chose a school with a banjo club and was successfully admitted. Even though it was a bit challenging for my academic level, but I managed through hard work and determination. I really wanted to attend this school. Its banjo club was renowned nationwide, and the instructor was a famous figure in the banjo world. I joined the club as soon as I enrolled, being the first choice. The person who welcomed me was the instructor, the prominent musician Evelyn. She belonged to the same banjo school as I did, and had been a judge in the contest where I won 1st place. Under Evelyn's guidance, I started exploring the banjo world with new friends. During my middle school years, we achieved national victory. We competed fiercely against strong schools, barely winning by a small margin. As a senior and club president, I accepted the championship trophy. At the celebration party, generous supporters sent over a splendid crab. I must have looked troubled, noticing which, Evelyn asked what was wrong. I explained my allergy. Evelyn seemed to learn about shellfish allergies for the first time and immediately started searching on her cell phone. After a quick check, she expressed her unawareness. She mentioned how her son loved crab, saying she never imagined a favorite food could become poisonous for someone. Thankfully, there were plenty of other delicacies at the party, so I was satisfied. I suppressed the memory of my love for crab, sealing away the desire to try it again. The pain and distress from allergic reactions were too familiar, creating a strange and unpleasant feeling. In high school, I continued to hone in on my skills in the banjo club, achieving 3 consecutive national championships. The 3 consecutive wins set a new record for the competition. I also achieved 3 consecutive victories in the individual category, maintaining the top position in high school banjo playing. After graduating high school, I went on to university. When I thanked Evelyn for her 6 years of guidance, she smiled and said it wasn't a goodbye, as we were from the same school of banjo and would likely collaborate again. In university, I continued playing the banjo. I got involved in activities to expand the world of banjo, further intensifying my involvement within our school. In my 3rd year of university, Evelyn transferred to our school studio as the head. Evelyn, too, had continued to excel and solidify her position within our school during this time. Thus, we started working together again. Once, Evelyn sprained her ankle. Her foot swelled up, making it difficult to walk. She was rubbing her painful foot, calling for a ride. The person who arrived was a man, about my age, introduced as Evelyn's son, Oliver. Together, we supported Evelyn and took her home. As we were about to leave, after laying Evelyn down, Oliver invited me to stay for coffee. While having coffee, I learned a lot about Evelyn from Oliver. Evelyn had divorced her husband, Jackson, 10 years ago, raising Oliver alone. The divorce was due to Evelyn's intense focus on the banjo, leading to neglect at home and worsening their relationship. Evelyn had promised to raise Oliver well to gain custody, and she did just that. Oliver remarked that it's great to have passions, but losing sight of everything else isn't good. He said he regularly meets and communicates with Jackson. Oliver, who loves crab, jokingly said that despite his parents often treating him to it to get his attention, he gets tired of the crab attacks. I recalled Evelyn once mentioning her son's love for crab. I shared my allergy story with Oliver, how it suddenly developed, the severity of the symptoms, the struggle with memories from when I loved those foods, and the lack of improvement despite allergy tests. Oliver empathized, saying it must be tough to have your favorite food turn poisonous. He wasn't sure how he'd cope if it had happened to him with crab. He hoped I'd recover soon and be able to enjoy it again. Oliver's kindness and generosity led us to meet and talk regularly. Oliver, a university student a year ahead of me, chose a major trading company for his career, aspiring to introduce wonderful products from around the world to Japan. His eyes sparkled as he talked about his dream, which made my heart flutter. The following year, as I graduated from university, I got a job at our school's association office. I continued to play the banjo while working there. The office accepted my wish to juggle both roles. I worked towards polishing my banjo skills and increasing its social recognition. Evelyn's support was instrumental in this job opportunity. She recommended me for my banjo skills, passion, and business management knowledge from university. One day, Oliver invited me out to celebrate my graduation and new job. He had successfully led a major project at work and earned high praise. I suggested celebrating with crab, but Oliver said it would be dull for me as I couldn't eat it, and he wouldn't enjoy it either. Instead, he took me to an upscale Chinese restaurant, ensuring the menu was without shrimp or crab. He mentioned Jackson had recently treated him to crab in celebration. Oliver and Jackson still keep in touch, and Jackson seemed to care about Evelyn. As our meal was ending, Oliver earnestly proposed to me, wanting to start a relationship with marriage in mind. He understood I was busy with my new job, so there was no rush, but he expressed his desire to build a family with me in the near future. His seriousness moved me, and I found myself tearing up. I had fallen for him more than I realized, and so we became engaged. My parents liked Oliver and were happy, and Evelyn was overjoyed, unable to hide her surprise. I heard that Jackson was also pleased. I thought I should properly meet Jackson soon. About a year later, as my work and banjo activities were going smoothly and Oliver's career was picking up, we got married. Our wedding reception featured a special menu without shrimp and crab, which was delicious and extravagant, receiving high praise from the guests. I met Jackson for the first time then. He seemed kind and reliable, much like Oliver. Jackson appeared more nervous than us, the bride and groom, as it had been a while since he last saw Evelyn. We set up our new home near Oliver's family and started our married life. I continued to progress in both my job and banjo playing, achieving great results. Oliver was also succeeding in his work, establishing his position in his department. Though we were both busy, we cooperatively managed household chores, living happily each day. Evelyn was getting more administrative work within the school, struggling to find time for her own practice, which seemed to cause her anxiety and impatience. Our relationship remained good after my marriage. Though we were teacher and student, colleagues, and had become like family, I felt our relationship was changing, slightly due to Evelyn's recent restlessness. Later, I began teaching as well as performing, recognized by the association for my skills. Oliver was thrilled for me, and Evelyn seemed happy too, but her reaction was somewhat subdued, which concerned me. 1.5 years into our marriage, 2 significant events occurred. The first was my pregnancy, revealed during a medical checkup for recent ill health. Oliver and I were expecting a new member of our family. Oliver was overjoyed, nearly in tears, literally jumping for joy. I was in disbelief about becoming a mother, smiling at the thought of our child. The second event was my selection as the representative for our banjo school in a biennial banjo performance competition. This event, where selected players from each school compete, is a significant event to showcase skills and the reputation of the school. Evelyn was also considered for the competition and showed interest, but I was chosen and she was not. Whether this was the cause, I couldn't be sure, but Evelyn's attitude towards me became colder and more distant. I hoped it was temporary and maintained my usual approach to her, thinking the baby might help mend our relationship. Around this time, Oliver got a promotion. Successfully completing projects and expanding profits, he was appointed as a department head, the youngest to do so. I was feeling utterly happy with all these joyous events. Evelyn invited us to a dinner to celebrate these occasions. I was pleased that Evelyn, who had been a bit distant recently, made the suggestion, and Oliver and I happily accepted. Oliver was delighted too, and jokingly said he had a surprise planned, though I had no idea what it could be. On the day of the celebration dinner at Oliver's family home, the table was filled with various dishes. When I saw all the dishes, I froze in shock. This was because the crabs were placed in their respective places. Evelyn, I can't eat crab. I know. This is prepared for Oliver. Yours is special, so it's okay. She explained that the crab was an expensive one, costing hundreds of dollars each, indeed looking splendid and delicious. But for me, whether exquisite or plain, it was something I couldn't eat. The world has advanced so much nowadays with technology. There's fake food that's very close to the real thing. This is, imitation crab, kanikama. Alternative foods have been evolving, and among them, imitation crab, or kanikama, has reached a point where its appearance and taste are indistinguishable from the real thing. Evelyn wanted me to experience the feeling of eating crab to alleviate any frustration. Oliver was initially surprised to see the crab on the table, but after hearing Evelyn's explanation, he suggested that I relax and enjoy. I agreed to Evelyn's proposal and sat down, and the celebratory meal began. Even knowing it was kanikama, I hesitantly tried a bite. Indeed, it did seem just like the real thing, reminding me of the taste from long ago. I realized this was the flavor I had longed for but couldn't have. I was astonished by the quality of the modern kanikama. Seeing me, Oliver seemed happy too. Wanting to experience the taste again, I took another bite, but immediately spat it out, feeling something was off, and threw all the crab on my plate into the kitchen trash. Oliver was shocked. "Why are you wasting food like this? It's just imitation crab, and my mom prepared it especially for you." He yelled, but I didn't flinch, knowing my life had been threatened. "This is not kanikama. It's real crab." Oliver, confused, checked the crab in the trash and muttered in realization. He confronted Evelyn, asking what this meant. Evelyn, flustered, repeated excuses like it might have been mistakenly mixed or wasn't clear. After 30 minutes after I first tried the crab, I developed hives and inflammation in my mouth. Clearly, it was an allergenic reaction. I spat it out immediately, yet I'm in this condition. If I had swallowed it, it wouldn't have ended well. Plus, I'm pregnant. What if it had harmed my baby? Evelyn, cornered, began to confess. "I was upset that you were thriving in banjo and selected for the competition while I was left out. I wanted to separate you and Oliver, and with a baby, it would have been much harder. So, I wanted to make you suffer and cause a miscarriage," she admitted. Hearing Evelyn's selfish reasoning, I was trembling with anger and sadness over her betrayal. Oliver was furious at her folly. Then, someone entered the room. It was Jackson. Apparently, he had heard everything from outside. "What you did is akin to attempted murder. There's no excuse for such selfish reasoning." As I was surprised by Jackson's sudden appearance, Oliver explained. "It was supposed to be a celebration, so I invited Dad as a surprise. He was concerned about Mom, and it seemed like a good opportunity." Evelyn, overwhelmed by Jackson's unexpected arrival, collapsed to her knees. Even if she didn't intend it, What she did was life-threatening for me. Jackson, a lawyer, asked if I wanted to press charges. In such a serious case, an immediate arrest would normally follow, but since it wasn't public, my decision as the victim was respected, saying it was legally questionable for him to offer such a choice. He admitted he was unfit as a lawyer. Considering the kindness Evelyn had shown me since middle school and the safety of my baby and me, I declared I wouldn't press charges, but would cut ties with her from that day. It was a decision made without Oliver's agreement, but he nodded in approval. Evelyn just wept. No amount of tears could undo her foolish actions. Under Jackson's watch, Evelyn was to seek rehabilitation. His intention wasn't to supervise her, but to rebuild their relationship. Yet, it ended up this way. Unswayed by emotions, I calmly reported the incident to the association. The leadership, caught off guard by a senior member's misconduct, deliberated and decided to dismiss Evelyn. It was necessary to free Evelyn from her obsession with the banjo. I heard from Jackson, who was keeping an eye on her, that Evelyn was now living modestly, looking for part-time work. The rewards for shrinking one's world by oneself and doing foolish deeds based on wrong thinking have been very great. I then joined the competition. The performance was a little difficult for the contestants, who had to cover their growing bellies, but they performed beautifully and won the competition. I was able to further the name of my school. I intend to continue to pursue the world of banjo. Now, building a happy and laughing family with my soon-to-be-born child was an equally important goal.
Actually, the bride can't have children, and I've always been against the marriage, but my son insisted, so I had no choice. In the middle of the wedding reception, the mother-in-law, standing on the stage to deliver her speech, blurted out something shocking. She boldly declared my infertility in front of all the attendees. Well, as you can see, the bride is a barren failure. But she's a career woman and she earns well, so I reluctantly accepted the marriage. I was left speechless by her audacity. How could she label a woman who can't have children a failure and shame her in front of everyone? The mother-in-law, who was completely oblivious to the horrifying words she had just uttered, proudly scanned the room with a triumphant look on her face. The wedding hall fell silent at the unexpected insult from the mother-in-law. My name is Catherine. I am a 31-year-old office worker at a well-known company. I belong to the glamorous department of product development, where I'm responsible for planning new products. I've been involved in several hit products so far, and I find my job very fulfilling. Though I'm content with my work and happy, I have a secret I can't tell anyone. That is, I'm infertile. I found out 5 years ago that I can't have children. I remember feeling shocked and devastated at the time. I felt worthless, and I lost hope for the future. In fact, the boyfriend I was dating at the time ended up breaking up with me. Being overwhelmed by sadness and frustration, the only thing that could uplift me was my job. I worked so I wouldn't have time to dwell on unnecessary thoughts. Looking back, I think I was avoiding reality. But thanks to my hard work, a product I was deeply involved in became a big hit, and my evaluation at work improved. Since I couldn't have children, I thought I had no choice but to give up on marriage. I was convinced that contributing to society through work was the only path I had in life. But then, an unexpected encounter came my way. At a meeting for product development, I met a man my age from a client company. This man changed my fate. His name is David. He's the son of the president of the client company, and he's the head of the planning department. David and I exchanged contact information right away. Initially, we only communicated for work, but gradually, our private exchanges increased. Eventually, we started dating, and it turned into a relationship. I thought I could never fall in love again, so meeting him felt like a miracle. David is a very kind and devoted man, and to such a man, I couldn't bring myself to reveal my secret. If David found out that I was infertile, he would surely leave me. I was scared at the thought, but I couldn't keep secrets from David, who treated me with sincerity. I didn't know what would happen, but I decided to be honest about my body. I made up my mind and told David that I was infertile. He'll leave me? I thought it was possible. Despite being resolved, I was anxious. But when I gathered the courage to talk, he started to cry after hearing it. He comforted me, saying, "It must have been tough. Thank you for telling me." His kindness made me cry, and I remembered it like it was yesterday. In the end, the breakup I feared did not come, and my relationship with David continued smoothly from that day. On our second anniversary, David celebrated at a restaurant. He opened a small case in front of me, revealing a ring, and then he spoke. "Catherine, I want you to marry me." It was an unexpected proposal. My heart pounded with joy, but I also felt a wave of anxiety. "David, are you sure about me? I can't have a baby. We can't have our own child. Are you still okay with that?" Even though David understands my situation, the weight of marriage is something different. I couldn't immediately say yes to his proposal. "Yeah, it doesn't matter. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Catherine. Even when things get tough, even when we're sad, I want us to live through it all together." David reassured me, taking my anxiety into account. At that moment, I might have shed a lifetime's worth of tears. Since the day I was diagnosed as infertile, I had never dreamt that this day would come. I knew then that I could face anything as long as I was with him. I accepted his proposal, certain of my feelings. "I want to live my life with you too, David. Thank you for always caring for me. I look forward to our future together." And so we quickly began preparations for our wedding. I was already past 30. I was eager to become a wife, to officially join our lives together as soon as possible. It's funny how much you want to rush things once a proposal is on the table. Now that marriage was becoming a reality, I felt it all the more. But before anything else, we had to meet David's parents. We had met them a few times before, but we really hadn't had a proper conversation. We set a date to meet and tell them about our engagement, but the news of our marriage did not go smoothly. While his father was very happy, his mother kept a stern face throughout. And then, "Catherine, I can't accept that you're going to marry David." She expressed her opposition to our marriage. "Why?" Before I could speak, David questioned his mother. As she continued to glare at me, she explained her reason. "You can't have children, right? That means we won't have any grandchildren, doesn't it? Our only son David can't have a child. Is there anything worse?" She brought up the very thing I didn't want to be confronted with. I was prepared to face blame for being infertile, but hearing it said outright really hurt. Her words left me without a reply. "You understand, right? David is set to become the next president of the company. It's only natural that we expect his wife to produce an heir. Marrying someone who can't do that, I won't allow it." She continued to deny our marriage in a forceful tone. I was fully aware that David was the future head of the company, and I understood that his parents would want him to have a child soon. But David proposed to me knowing all this. Not being able to have a child with David is painful for me too. Even though we chose to get married knowing all of this, her words were too harsh. "I'm the one who said it didn't matter." David jumped in, defending me against his mother. "Stop blaming Catherine. Don't trample over our decisions like this." David spoke up for me when I was lost for words. His dad was also angry at his mom, saying, "How can you say such a thing?" But no matter what anyone said, his mother remained unmoved, her expression unchanged. "I'm not saying anything wrong," she declared before leaving the table, indicating she had no more to discuss. In the end, our conversation that day didn't lead to any resolution. Still, it didn't change our firm decision to get married. We took the plunge and registered our marriage with his father's approval. We knew if we waited for her approval, we might never get married. "It doesn't matter if my mom is against it," David reassured me. "I'm the one who wanted to get married. Let's just wait for her to eventually give in." And so David and I became husband and wife. Yet even after that, his mother refused to acknowledge our marriage. "I will never accept this. I won't even attend the wedding," she said, pushing it even further. Because of this, we decided to put off the wedding ceremony. We still hoped to have her acceptance before we celebrated our union. Day after day, his father tried to persuade her, and both David and I continued to appeal to her, pouring our hearts out into every plea. But she remained stubborn and refused to give in. Eventually, even my parents visited his parents' house several times to try and talk her down. Even some of David's relatives suggested she accept our marriage. Finally, after all these earnest appeals from everyone around her, she relented. At last, we could proceed with the wedding ceremony. She still seemed discontented, but David and I began our preparations and finally set a date for our wedding. It was a year from the day we registered our marriage, essentially our first wedding anniversary. When our wedding day was finally set, David and I felt relieved, and before we knew it, the day of our wedding arrived. I was deeply touched, filled with joy that we were finally celebrating this day. I was finally able to wear the wedding dress that I had almost given up on. It felt like a dream come true. The wedding ceremony went smoothly at the church, and the reception began. Surrounded by the blessings of many attendees, I was overflowing with happiness. I owe it all to David, who stood by my side and led me here, even when I was feeling defeated and thought I wasn't worthy of marriage. I couldn't thank him enough. Seeing David all dressed up and looking so gallant and dependable made me so happy. As the reception proceeded and we were about to retreat for a costume change, I noticed his mother taking the stage. It looked like she had asked the MC for permission to say a few words to the attendees. And so she started her speech on her own. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my son's wedding today. The truth is, the bride can't have children, and I've been against their marriage all along." I was about to leave my seat to change, but her words made me freeze on the spot. She had just mentioned something that shouldn't be said, especially not here at our joyful wedding celebration. The lively atmosphere in the venue quickly hushed to a silence. But my son was insistent, so I gave in and accepted their marriage. In the dead silent hall, mother-in-law's voice was the only one echoing. Frozen in place, I watched as David tried to approach mother-in-law and snatch the microphone. "Mom, can you stop this?" But David's attempts were smoothly evaded by mother-in-law, who wouldn't be stopped. Holding onto the microphone tightly, so as not to lose it, she continued to address the attendees. "You see, I will never be able to hold a grandchild in my life. Can you believe such a dreadful story? Really, I don't understand why he chose a woman like this." I was flabbergasted by the barrage of harsh words. Beside me, David was struggling to contain his anger towards his mother's unhinged outburst. Then, mother-in-law dropped the bombshell. "Well, as you can see, my daughter-in-law is a barren failure. But she's quite the career woman and makes good money, so I begrudgingly accepted their marriage." Mother-in-law chuckled loudly at her own words. She then looked at me and added one final jab. You should be grateful. It's thanks to me that you're having this day. With that, mother-in-law, appearing pleased, returned to her seat, having finished her utterly disgraceful speech. Had there ever been a more offensive speech? I was too stunned to even hear the voices around me. Urged by David and the venue staff, I was led out of the hall with my mind a blur. Once inside the dressing room, all the suppressed emotions came crashing in. Anger, sadness, the sense of loss from having our anticipated ceremony ruined. I was overwhelmed by my distaste for everything. I never wanted to see my mother-in-law's face again. I didn't want to return to a venue where such a person was present. As I was changing out of my current dress for the next one, I refused to put on the next dress and changed into my own clothes instead. I've had enough. I'm going home, I told David and ran out of the dressing room, towards the entrance of the venue. Catherine, wait a minute. Ignoring David's attempts to stop me, I jumped into a taxi that was parked at the entrance. I asked the driver to take me home. Having been humiliated by my mother-in-law in front of everyone at the reception, I couldn't contain my anger. I wanted to escape from there as quickly as possible. Our new home, where David and I had just started living, was a short 5-minute drive from the wedding venue. Upon entering our home, the tears I had been holding back flowed freely. I never dreamed that I would be treated so cruelly in front of a crowd on my wedding day. My happiness from yesterday had instantly turned into the worst despair. It's not like I chose to be infertile. And to expose that in front of so many people, especially on a day like this. Thoughts were racing through my head. While I was wiping away my tears, David arrived. Catherine, I'm truly sorry. Please forgive me. I never imagined my mother would say such horrible things. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything for you. David bowed deeply to me, offering words of apology. He explained that, as the groom, he couldn't afford to raise his voice against his mother's antics. I knew very well that David was a decent person. And besides, mother-in-law was the one at fault here. I didn't feel like blaming him at all. Please, Catherine, let's go back to the wedding. I told my dad to keep my mom out of the venue. They're in the middle of a dress change, and it's a mingling time for the guests. We can still make it back in time. I don't want our reception to end in shambles like this. Please let's go back together. I nodded at David's plea. I decided to trust him and return to the wedding. I didn't want to cause any more pain for him, my supporter and my understanding companion. Moreover, I was reluctant to ruin the reception we had both painstakingly prepared for. Apologizing to David for rushing back home in a huff, we made our way back to the venue. In the taxi, we held hands, promising to see our wedding reception through to the end. Once we returned and entered the family waiting room, we found my mother-in-law surrounded by relatives. It was clear from her exhausted expression that she had been heavily reprimanded. Seeing my face, mother-in-law approached me. Oh, Catherine, I'm so sorry. Can we just pretend that earlier incident never happened? She lowered her head slightly towards me, pleading for forgiveness in a childish voice. It was a complete turnaround from the smug face she had displayed at the reception. What? How could you even suggest that? After the humiliation you caused in front of so many people, how can you say let's just forget it all happened? My anger resurfaced at mother-in-law's insolent behavior. The audacity of asking for forgiveness after what she had done was beyond my comprehension. Why was she seeking forgiveness in the first place when she didn't even want to accept me? She could have just left things the way they were if she disliked it so much. I expressed my unwillingness to forgive her to my mother-in-law and started preparing to get back to the ceremony. Don't be like that. I'm apologizing, so why won't you forgive me? I had no idea that one of your relatives was a key client of our company. My maternal uncle, as it turns out, runs a significant client of my father-in-law's company. Apparently, while I was away, he had given mother-in-law a serious dressing down. He had even hinted at stopping the business transaction. Thanks to my father-in-law's desperate apologies, the situation was barely kept under control. I immediately understood why mother-in-law was apologizing. It wasn't out of guilt or regret towards me, but for her own self-preservation. I was so astounded that I was at a loss for words. It was then that David, who had been silently watching our exchange, finally spoke up. "Mom, is that your idea of an apology? Aren't you disrespecting Catherine too much? And you're apologizing to her just because you were scolded by a client." My mother-in-law looked blankly at David, who had raised his voice suddenly. It was rare for him to lose his temper like this, as he was typically calm and collected. It was understandable that mother-in-law was taken aback. "Do you even understand how much you hurt Catherine, Mom? You made light of our most sensitive issue in front of everyone at our wedding. As a person, that's the worst thing you could do. No matter the reason, it's unforgivable to casually bring up someone's health issues like that." David didn't hold back, continuing to shout at mother-in-law. He let out all the pent-up feelings he had towards his own mother. He had witnessed firsthand how his mother-in-law had hurt me time and time again, using my infertility as a weapon. The worst of it all was her outrageous behavior at today's reception. David's gaze upon his mother was filled with disdain. "I'm done with you. Consider yourself without a son. If you can't accept Catherine as my wife, that's your problem. What you say doesn't affect us. Our family doesn't concern outsiders." A complete disavowal. David finally laid it out for my mother-in-law. He declared he had no intention of associating with her from here on out. As far as he was concerned, he had no mother. That's what he told my mother-in-law. "David, don't say things like that. I really want to celebrate you. Don't be angry, okay? I won't say anything more. Let's lift the mood and enjoy the wedding, shall we?" His mother turned sickly pale at David's words. In a fluster, she tried to gauge his mood. However, there was nothing she could say now that would make David listen. "Today's not only about me. It's about Catherine, too. We're a team. We're one. Looking down on Catherine is just like looking down on me. I get it. You don't want to celebrate us, so just leave now. Get out." Her apologies were nothing more than self-preservation. There was no sincerity towards me. David told her mercilessly to get out. He told her that I was his only family. "I can't believe this, David." Upon hearing David's words, his mother stood there dumbfounded. It seemed she hadn't expected such clear repulsion from her son. A cold gaze was cast upon her by David, me, David's father, and the rest of the relatives. Having lost all allies and standing alone, she finally accepted the reality. Her only option was to leave the scene. After she had gone, I quickly changed my dress, took David's hand, and we returned to the venue hand in hand. Guests who were oblivious to the turmoil that had occurred. Although we had kept them waiting for a considerable length of time, they welcomed us back with a round of applause. It seemed like everyone had sensed the situation and kindly waited for us. I was truly grateful for this warm atmosphere. And the wedding reception, now devoid of my mother-in-law, proceeded smoothly, with David and I preparing to give our final speech. We made sure to apologize sincerely for the disruption caused by my mother-in-law, and so we managed to conclude our reception without further ado. Following this, true to David's declaration, we decided to completely distance ourselves from my mother-in-law. David changed his contact information, making sure no communication came through from her. He even proposed that we move homes, even though we'd just settled into our new one. Realizing David's firm intent to sever all ties with mother-in-law, I agreed to the move. The moving expenses were covered by my father-in-law, citing the troubles caused by my mother-in-law, and we promptly relocated to our new home. After ensuring our move was complete, father-in-law took the opportunity to serve mother-in-law with divorce papers. Father-in-law, too, had long harbored resentment towards mother-in-law's behavior towards me, and the incident at the wedding was the final straw. While a sincere apology ensured that our uncle, who was also a business associate, did not sever ties with us, he was completely fed up with my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law was expelled from her family home, forced to embark on a lonely new life. Since David and I have no involvement, we have no idea about mother-in-law's whereabouts or her current state. Rumors suggest that due to the disgraceful display at the wedding, no family members are willing to aid her, and she is living a lonely, harsh life. Apparently, she's residing in a budget apartment, barely making ends meet by working part-time jobs from morning till night. On the other hand, David and I are enjoying a harmonious married life. We have no children, but even without the blessing of children, we can live together for the rest of our lives, as long as we continue to respect and grow with each other every day. We can always be happy. David and I believe this, as we join hands and face our future together. Our hopes spread toward the future we are building together. My name is Charlotte. I married Mickey when I was 25 after meeting him at a party. Mickey had always said, "You can be a stay-at-home wife if you want." And indeed, we could live comfortably on Mickey's income alone. But I loved my job, and I continued to work at the company that had taken care of me since I graduated from high school. However, in the second year of our marriage, I decided to quit my job. The trigger was a phone call from father-in-law telling me that mother-in-law had collapsed. I loved my gentle and kind mother-in-law. When I rushed to mother-in-law's side alone, as Mickey couldn't make it due to work, mother-in-law greeted me with a weak smile, connected to many tubes. Mother-in-law was not in immediate danger, but her collapse had left her in need of care. We had to decide who would take care of mother-in-law before she was discharged. I thought Angelina, my unmarried sister-in-law who lived with her parents, would do it, but she firmly refused. Angelina, who mainly works from home, told the hospitalized mother-in-law, "I'm not playing around at home, so I can't take care of Mom. Get it together." Mother-in-law smiled in a troubled way, but I was honestly taken aback by how someone could say such a thing when their own mother was suffering. Then Angelina, who didn't want to take care of mother-in-law, called Mickey and asked me for a meeting. At the in-laws' house, a meeting was held with father-in-law, Angelina, and us, the married couple, to discuss who will take care of mother-in-law. "I really can't take care of Mom."
"What should I do about the housework now that my wife has collapsed so soon?"
Angelina kept saying. "Impossible." And father-in-law, who had left all the housework to mother-in-law, seemed to have no intention of taking care of her. Mickey tried to persuade Angelina to take care of mother-in-law, but she firmly refused. The conclusion of this family meeting seemed predetermined. Angelina and father-in-law were indirectly telling me to take care of mother-in-law. I had some attachment to the job I had continued since graduating from high school, but I didn't want to see any more of this meeting, where they were pushing the care of mother-in-law, who had been so kind to me since I married Mickey, onto each other. So I made up my mind and said, "I understand. I'll quit my job and take care of mother-in-law. We'll be living together from now on, so please treat me well." Father-in-law said,
"Thank you, Charlotte,"
and thanked me happily. But Angelina spat out, "Of course." Mickey asked me,
"Are you sure? If it's too much, we can hire a professional to take care of Mom."
but I nodded. "It's okay. I really owed a lot to mother-in-law. Hiring a professional would cost money, and mother-in-law might feel hesitant. I thought it would be better for mother-in-law to be taken care of by me, a family member, even though I was her daughter-in-law. I knew that father-in-law was a vague person who wanted to avoid trouble, and Angelina had a mean-spirited personality. I was anxious about having to live with these two from now on, but I made up my mind, quit my job, and started living with my in-laws. That life was more challenging than I had imagined. Mother-in-law's body had become uncooperative, so she initially lamented needing care even to go to the bathroom. She often said, "I'm sorry," to me for having to take care of her, and it was painful to see mother-in-law like that. And above all, Angelina's bullying of me as the daughter-in-law took a mental toll. My family didn't have money, and I had been working since high school without going to college, but Angelina often mocked my education. While eating the food I made and talking to father-in-law about work, she would suddenly say, "Oh, sorry, Charlotte. This conversation might be too difficult for a high school graduate. I shouldn't have talked about something you can't understand." Or she would come to me, who is caring for mother-in-law, and deliberately say, "You're just a lowly high school graduate daughter-in-law, so you have to at least take care of mom." Mother-in-law, with her body that couldn't move freely, would scold Angelina, saying, "Don't say such things to Charlotte." Angelina seemed to hate being scolded by mother-in-law. So after being sternly told by mother-in-law, she began to badmouth me when mother-in-law wasn't around. I have a respectable job at home, so it's only natural for a lowly high school graduate like Charlotte to do the housework. So sometimes make food that tastes good. It's always so bad. When Angelina, who did no housework, said this to me while I was cooking, I even thought about not serving her meal, but I held back. When she found an unclean spot, she would say loudly, "Wow, a trashy daughter-in-law. Can't tell the difference between trash. There's so much garbage piled up." But I held back then, too. I didn't want it to become known that Angelina and I were not getting along, as it would be a mental burden on mother-in-law. I endured and lied to mother-in-law, who would ask, "Is she not being mean to you?" With a smile saying, "I'm fine." Mickey knew Angelina's personality and often worried about me.
"Are you not pushing yourself too hard?"
he would ask, and I would lie to him too, saying, "I'm fine." I didn't want to burden Mickey, who was working hard in a company with a strict boss with family problems. Father-in-law acted as if he couldn't hear how much I was being insulted. To father-in-law, who just wanted someone to do the housework in place of mother-in-law, it probably didn't matter what was said to me. For mother-in-law, for Mickey, inspiring myself with these thoughts, I devoted myself to mother-in-law for a year. Then, mother-in-law suddenly passed away, peacefully in her sleep. "Mama died because you didn't take proper care of her. Such a useless, trashy daughter-in-law." Angelina said this to me crying, as I stood in shock in front of the deceased mother-in-law. I had done my best to take care of mother-in-law, but the thought that mother-in-law might have died because of my lack of care was swirling in my head. During mother-in-law's funeral service, I was in a daze, like an empty shell the whole time. Mickey was considerate, but Angelina kept saying to me so Mickey couldn't hear, "You're really useless." With mother-in-law's funeral service over, there was no reason for me to continue living with my in-laws. As I stood alone in my suit, looking at my mother-in-law's empty bed, father-in-law pleaded with me.
"Please, Charlotte, my wife has passed away, but won't you continue to live with us?"
Father-in-law is someone who can't do any housework at all. I couldn't imagine Angelina doing housework either. Father-in-law probably wanted me to continue living with them as a housekeeper. I was astonished by this, but more than anything, I was appalled that father-in-law would plead for such a thing right after mother-in-law's funeral service had ended. I thought this man really only thinks about himself, but I didn't give an answer on the spot. I need to consult with Mickey, so I can't decide on my own. Father-in-law clung to me, saying,
"Please, I beg you."
But I only replied that I would consult with Mickey, and the conversation ended in a stalemate.
"Charlotte, Mom has passed away. There's no need to live together anymore. Let's move out, live just the two of us. You've been through a lot, haven't you?
A few days after mother-in-law's funeral service, Mickey said this to me. I also wanted to end the cohabitation. Now that mother-in-law had passed away, there was no reason to live with Angelina, who would speak ill of me, and father-in-law, who would treat me as a housekeeper. Thanking Mickey for his consideration, we, as a couple, decided to leave my in-laws' house. But that plan was completely crushed by Angelina.
What? I won't allow you to leave. Saying such a thing the moment Mom is gone is too heartless.
When Mickey and I told Angelina and father-in-law that we were thinking of leaving, Angelina became furious like a raging fire.
It's not heartless. Charlotte took really good care of Mom. She deserves to be freed now.
A high school graduate like her finding a job now is impossible. If she can't be useful to society, she should at least do housework in this house and be of some use to Dad and me.
Charlotte was excellent at her job. You have no right to say that to her. Anyway, neither Mickey nor Charlotte has any intention of leaving this house.
Because Angelina stormed out of the room after saying this, the discussion was forcibly ended. But Mickey said,
"We can just leave on our own,"
and started looking for a place. I also began preparing for the move, looking for properties while doing housework so as not to be complained about by Angelina, and reducing our belongings. But Angelina was watching me, and when I was organizing my belongings, she would scatter them, shouting, "Heartless person! I'll never let you leave this house." Or when I was making phone calls to look for property, she would snatch my mobile phone and say to the real estate agent, "Please pretend that conversation never happened." She started to act completely out of control. Mickey would get angry at Angelina every time, but she would always yell back at him,
"Your wife is the worst. You have no eye for women."
And nothing would improve. One day during dinner, when Mickey and I were both at our wits' end, Angelina, in a rare good mood, called out to me, "Charlotte, tomorrow my fiancé is coming to our house. I know you're a useless piece of trash, but try to use your brainless head and read the room, okay?" I was used to being berated at the dinner table when Mickey wasn't around, but I was surprised by the word fiancé that came out of Angelina's mouth. I know it's really rude, but I was shocked to think there's a man in the world who would want to marry someone like her. After being told repeatedly during dinner to be a good girl, I responded vaguely and ended the day doing housework as usual. And then the next day, Angelina, dressed more stylishly than I had ever seen her, brought her fiancé Randolph. Angelina's fiancé was wearing a well-fitted suit, was polite, and seemed intelligent. Why would such a seemingly decent person want to marry Angelina? I thought, again rudely, as I prepared drinks and headed to the living room where father-in-law, Angelina, and Randolph were. Then I heard Angelina's cajoling voice coming from the living room. "That spaced-out girl earlier is Mickey's wife. She really can't do anything. I do all the housework in our house, and I worked hard to take care of our deceased mom. I think Mom could have lived longer if that girl hadn't stressed her out." I froze in the front of the living room. I felt as if I had been struck from behind by Angelina's words. The shock woke me up. Because I didn't want to burden Mickey or mother-in-law, I had been holding back. But now, it felt like all those feelings were flooding out. I did all the housework. I worked hard to take care of mother-in-law. All of it was me. Angelina never helped me with anything. I opened the living room door, quietly served the drinks, and greeted Randolph with a smile. "Hello, as you were introduced. I'm the high school graduate, bottom of the barrel, useless trash. Nice to meet you." Angelina let out a panicked shout, but I kept talking smoothly. Angelina really guides me well. She evaluates every meal I make as tasteless, and when I'm cleaning, she comes to laugh, saying that the trash is cleaning up trash. She often scolded me for my caregiving, saying that mother-in-law died early because of my incompetence. "You? What are you saying?" pointing at Angelina, who was furious like a demon and smiling. See, she's guiding me like that. Angelina pulled my hair and yelled, "Stop it!" Randolph must have never seen her like this before. He looked confused, saying, "What? What?" And I felt sorry for him. But this should make him reconsider marrying Angelina. I felt like I had saved him, so I excused myself in mind for causing this chaos. Well then, the trash will leave now. I left the in-laws' house with only my valuables. Father-in-law, wanting to avoid trouble, just sat silently during my counterattack. Seeing Angelina's furious rage, and Randolph almost crying as he tried to calm her down, was refreshing. I left the in-laws' house and took refuge in my parents' home. When I explained the situation to my parents, they were appalled by Angelina's behavior and father-in-law's indifference and told me, "From now on, do as you please, Charlotte." While enjoying a relaxing time at home for the first time in a while, Mickey came to my parents' house at night. Mickey had come home to be yelled at by Angelina. "It's all your wife's fault." Giving up on getting a coherent story from the furious Angelina, Mickey somehow learned from father-in-law that I had left and came to me, even though he was tired after work.
"We should have moved out forcibly sooner. I knew that my sister and father had been tormenting Charlotte all this time, and I'm sorry I couldn't help. From now on, I'll always protect Charlotte. So, if you're okay with me, I want you to stay with me as my wife forever."
Mickey, you've always tried to protect me, haven't you? I'm sorry for ruining Angela's engagement. Even Angelina, as she is Mickey's blood-related sibling. Mickey hugged me as I apologized and repeatedly told me,
"Charlotte, you did nothing wrong."
I stayed at my parents' house for a while, and Mickey moved my belongings. Afterwards, Mickey and I found a nice property, moved there, and were able to start a peaceful life. We received calls from Angelina and father-in-law every day, but we blocked them. According to Mickey, Angelina's engagement was called off. Randolph was taken aback by the overly excited Angelina and said,
"I need to think about marriage,"
and then became unreachable. Angelina was crying and yelling at Mickey, "It's your wife's fault." But Mickey calmly replied,
"Charlotte just told the truth."
Father-in-law seemed desperate after losing his housekeeper, his daughter-in-law. He asked Mickey,
"Can you bring Charlotte back?"
But Mickey said,
"I'm cutting ties with this house,"
and left the in-laws' house. As for me, I found out I was pregnant a few months after leaving the in-laws' house. When I told Mickey, he was thrilled, and he changed jobs from the strict company where he was working, saying,
"I can't raise our child together with my current job."
Mickey decided to change jobs. I believe he's trying to keep the promise he made when he came to pick me up at my parents' house, that he would protect Charlotte. Since we've cut off contact with the in-laws, we haven't reported that we're having a child. I think there's no need to report it, as I'm sure that even if Angelina and father-in-law knew I was having a child, their attitudes wouldn't change. Now that my belly has grown, Mickey and I are looking forward to the birth of our child and living happily day by day.
Hospitalization? You're planning to use that as an excuse to slack off on housework even more? Slack off? I didn't mean to. If you keep shirking your chores, divorce is next. Unfazed, my husband casually spoke these words, not worrying about my upcoming hospital stay. Apparently, he thinks he can intimidate me with the threat of divorce. He believes that if he dangles the possibility of a split, I'll become obedient. What an insult. Just because I'm a housewife doesn't mean I'll let myself be pushed around. I'm definitely going to divorce him. Definitely escape from this hell. I'm Sandy Davis, 28 years old. A year ago, I married Kenny, a colleague from work. We were in different departments, but often interacted, and his advances led to a relationship. After dating smoothly, we finally tied the knot. With our marriage, I resigned from the company and became a full-time housewife. That's because Kenny had said this to me before we got married. "Hey Sandy, after we get married, Could you become a full-time housewife? Huh? But I don't really hate my current job. My mom was always a stay-at-home mom, and I think it's best for women to protect the home. Thanks to her, my dad could focus on work without stress. Is that so? Are you sure? I mean, I'm not particularly skilled at housework or anything. That's okay. All I want is for you to handle the house without overworking yourself. I'll earn our living out there. Okay, I understand. If you say so, Kenny, I'll try being a housewife. So I quit my job and started a new life as a housewife. Managing unfamiliar chores was challenging, but it was my life with Kenny, whom I loved so much. Plus, I lost my parents a few years ago, and my only family now is my husband. I was determined to cherish this life. However, happiness doesn't last forever. One day, 6 months after our marriage, my husband came home from work in an unusually bad mood. Even when tired, he would usually greet me with "I'm home," but not today. He let out a big sigh and plopped down on the sofa. I cautiously approached him. "Kenny, welcome home. You seem tired. Are you okay?" "Dinner's ready. Would you like to eat? Or maybe you want to take a shower first?" "Hey, Kenny. Can't you see I'm thinking? Stop bothering me." With wide eyes and a glare in my direction, my husband lashed out. I had never seen him this angry before, and I involuntarily flinched. I'm sorry." Despite my immediate apology, he clicked his tongue loudly enough for me to hear it. In an obnoxious tone, he began to take out his bad mood on me. "Must be nice just lazing around the house all day." "Wait, Kenny, what are you saying all of a sudden? You're supposedly a housewife, but really you're just lounging around while I'm at work. You're really the worst." "Hold on. I'm always doing chores around the house." "Shut up. You're nothing but a leech. Yet you have the nerve to talk back to me?" He suddenly grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked it upwards. I felt an unspeakable fear at his actions. I quickly raised my voice, "Stop it!" But my plea didn't reach him. For the following hour, I was subjected to a barrage of verbal abuse, called an inept wife and a freeloader. "I'm reducing our monthly expenses, you know." As he declared, his treatment of me worsened day by day. Initially, he only reduced our spending money by $100, but now I'm only getting half of what we used to. Our relationship wasn't one between husband and wife anymore. It was more like master and servant. This was only a year into our marriage. You might think it's only been a year, but for me, it was a year of hell. From the day Kenny lost his senses, time seemed to crawl at a painfully slow pace. Every night, I was reprimanded and blamed for every little thing. Even so, the reason I stayed with Kenny as a couple was because I couldn't bring myself to truly dislike him. I kept hoping he would someday return to his old self. One day, something happened. I was cleaning around the house when my cell phone rang. Checking the screen, I saw a name that I hadn't seen in a while. Laurie, a former coworker's. Excited by the unexpected call, I immediately pressed the answer button. "Hello, Laurie. Long time no see."
"Sandy, it's been a while. Hey, can you chat right now?"
"Of course."
"I'm sorry for being so blunt, but Sandy, are you fighting with your husband?"
"Arguing? Why do you ask?"
"I heard through the grapevine. Recently, Kenny has been talking bad about you at work."
What's this about?" According to Laurie, my husband looks as if he is very dominant at home lately. "She can't do anything without me. She's so helpless when it comes to housework. She would be divorced if she wasn't with me." Apparently, he had been bad-mouthing me to our former colleagues and junior staff in his department. Because I used to work at the same company, everyone in his workplace knows me. My former coworkers, familiar with me, seem to have subtly defended me, but it seems that even this did not sit well with Kenny, and he was giving the cold shoulder to the juniors and colleagues who defended me. Because of this, the trust he had built up was crumbling, and the atmosphere in his department was supposedly quite bad. Upon hearing this, Laurie felt concerned and decided to reach out to me. I was at a loss for words after hearing this series of events. Not only did I feel guilty, but I also felt extremely embarrassed that my husband was causing trouble for his coworkers. "I'm sorry, Laurie. It seems like Kenny has been causing trouble."
"It's okay. I'm in a different department, but you need to do something about this sooner. Kenny will be isolated at work."
"I know, but he won't even listen to me at home."
"I see. but it would be better to discuss this before things get out of hand. For your sake, and for Kenny's too.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Lori. I'll try to talk to him tonight.
Give it a try, and if anything comes up, I'm always here to listen.
After saying thank you and hanging up the phone, I got back to cleaning. I made up my mind to have a serious talk with Kenny once he got home, and so I waited for his return. Several hours later, my husband came home from work as always. He headed straight for the fridge and grabbed a beer. In the past few months, he hadn't even been saying, "I'm home," nor discussing the events of his day. After finishing his meal, he usually starts lecturing me. So before he could take a sip of beer, I brought up the conversation. "Hey, Kenny, have things been going well at work recently?" "Huh? What's with the sudden question? I'm not so incompetent that you need to worry about me." "It's not about work, actually. I heard something today. They said you've been talking behind my back at work." "Talking behind your back? What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb." I rebuked my husband, who tried to play it off. I confronted him, making it clear to my surprised husband. "Hey, what do you want to accomplish? Not just at home, but even at work. You've been bad-mouthing me. What's so fun about creating a negative atmosphere in your department?" "Huh? What are you saying? Do you realize everyone is having a hard time because of you, Kenny? Why can't you see that? If you want to talk bad about me in front of me, then do as you please, but don't cause trouble for your colleagues too." Right after I said that, a sharp sound echoed in the room. I felt a dull pain on my left cheek, slowly spreading. A few seconds later, I realized my husband had slapped me. "Ugh, why would you do that?" "Why? It's because you keep back-talking." "Back-talking? I was just worried about you, Kenny." "Shut up! There's no reason for you to be ordering me around. Get it? You can live because of me. If you understand that, just keep quiet and take care of the house." He spat out the harsh words with a strong tone. I was unable to articulate a response. I had plenty to say, but my body wouldn't cooperate due to the fear. Afterwards, my husband started drinking his beer as if nothing had happened. He started laughing while watching TV and ordered me to bring him snacks. In the end, no matter how much I worried about him, no matter what I say to him, it's all pointless. No matter what, I can't seem to get my husband to understand. Since then, the way he treated me worsened day by day. Not only my heart, but also my body was in shreds. Then one day, on my way to the grocery store, I was suddenly overcome with extreme nausea. My vision warped and I was assaulted by such severe dizziness that I couldn't even stand. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a hospital bed. The doctor, upon seeing me awake, kindly explained everything to me. I had collapsed on the street. I was suffering from malnutrition and the stress had caused me to develop a stomach ulcer. "Miss Davis, right now, both your mind and body are completely exhausted. You're in a severe state of overwork. For now, you should be admitted to the hospital for about a week." "Hospitalization? But I'm a stay-at-home wife. And the household chores. What are you saying? If you continue like this, you'll wear yourself out." "I understand." But then it was already past 7 p.m. I decided to contact my husband to bring me some change of clothes, so I took out my phone. To my surprise, there were tons of messages that had arrived within the last hour.
"Where are you now? Get back home, now! You're such a money sucker, and now you're slacking off from your chores?"
He must have returned from work to find me gone and gotten furious that cleaning and laundry weren't done. Gathering my courage, I called him. After a few rings, he picked up.
"Where the hell have you been? And what have you been doing?"
He shouted as soon as he picked up the phone. I took a deep breath and slowly explained the situation to him. "That's why the doctor told me that I need to be hospitalized for about a week, so..."
"Hospitalized? So you're planning to use that as an excuse to slack off even more?"
"I'm not slacking off,
You've already slacked off on your chores, so the next thing will be divorce.
What?
You'd be in trouble if we got divorced, right? You don't have any relatives, do you? If I leave you, you'll be all alone for sure, won't you?"
Even though his wife had been hospitalized, instead of showing me concern, he used the threat of divorce to order me to come home. At that moment, a fury I had never felt before reached its peak. Enough. I've had enough. I will never be happy if I continue to live with this man. Then it's better to. As I gathered my thoughts, my husband caught up in his own power trip, starting to provoke me over the phone.
"Hey, are you listening? You'd be in trouble if we divorced, wouldn't you?"
Fine.
What did you say?"
I said fine. Let's get a divorce.
No. What are you talking about? Do you even understand what divorce means?"
Of course I do. But in return, you prepare the divorce papers.
As if you have the guts to divorce me. Just remember this.
In his annoyance, my husband hung up without waiting for a reply. The next phone call came later. The caller was my old boss from the job I used to have. Actually, even after I became a housewife, my old boss had been contacting me on several occasions. You see, I used to enjoy getting certifications, and I had several before I got married. I got some during my student days and some after I started working, and they were all beneficial for my job. Thanks to them, I had a wide range of work responsibilities, and I was trusted by the higher-ups. When I decided to quit my job after getting married, they tried to keep me on many times. This time, having decided to divorce while in hospital, I was also considering returning to work. When I mentioned this to my boss, he immediately agreed to take me back. He even took care of the arrangements for company housing, so it was decided that I would return to work and move into the dormitory next month. I'm ready now. I can get away from my husband at any time. Later, when I returned home from the hospital, I found the completed divorce papers on the desk. I signed them and immediately submitted them to the courthouse. I hurried back home and packed up my essentials. Then, I left the house before my ex-husband returned. A few hours later, while I was taking a breather in a budget hotel, my phone vibrated with a call from Kenny. Reluctantly answering the persistent phone calls, he yelled at me.
Hey, did you get discharged from the hospital today?
Yes, so what? I responded.
What do you mean, so what? You didn't leave the divorce papers, so you went home, did you? Why didn't you wait for me to come back?
You already know the answer. There's no reason to live together in the same house when we're strangers now, is there?
Huh? Strangers? What are you talking about? You threw away the divorce papers, didn't you?
Threw them away?
You got scared when you realized I was serious about the divorce papers and threw them away, right?
It seems like Kenny is convinced that there's no way I could go through with the divorce. As proof, he is convinced that I threw away the divorce papers and speaks as if I have no intention of divorcing at all. Responding to him, who didn't seem to understand the situation, I replied sarcastically, "Listen, you seem to be misunderstanding something, but I never threw away the divorce papers."
Huh? Then where are they?
I've submitted them. To the city hall.
What kind of joke is...
It's not a joke. It's already been accepted, and you and I are now strangers. We'll never have to deal with each other again. At that explanation, he raised his voice.
Don't mess with me.
Whether he couldn't believe what I said or not, he started blaming me again.
You. There's no way you can divorce. You who have no family? No job?
I certainly have no family, but I do have a job now.
Huh? You're a housewife.
That was true until now. I contacted my boss while in the hospital, and they agreed to hire me back.
That's not something you can do so easily.
It's possible. They even told me they want me back.
There's no way.
You probably don't know, but I'm going to resume work and live in the company's dormitory from next month. Then over the phone, Kenny let out a painful voice.
Wait a minute. This must be a joke, right? I wasn't serious about the divorce.
I don't care. I accepted the divorce because it was what you wanted. There's no problem with that, right?
But that's a problem. How am I supposed to live without you?
As soon as he understood it was a divorce, my ex-husband began to cling without learning his lesson. Disgusted by his attitude, I couldn't help but raise my voice. Huh? I don't care about your life. You're an adult. Figure it out on your own. I was your failed wife, right? So you shouldn't have any problems without me.
That's not true. Wait, I apologize. Please forgive me.
Shut up. I don't love you one bit anymore. I will never forget how you treated me like a slave. Don't ever appear in front of me again. Reflect on your actions and live alone for the rest of your life. After hanging up the phone unilaterally, I blocked his number. I made sure we would never have to interact again. That being said, my new job is at his workplace. The news of our divorce spread through the office. Because he badmouthed me at work, he seems to be looked at as getting what he deserves. He started to feel out of place at work and began taking unauthorized absences. As a result, Kenny was fired for misconduct. Thanks to this, all connections with him were completely cut off. He ended up in debt due to the alimony I demanded after the divorce. Losing his job and even incurring debt, I don't know what he's doing or where. The one thing I'm sure of is that he isn't living a wealthy life. His unhappiness is my only consolation after the torment I've suffered. From now on, I will work for myself and live for myself. I will regain the freedom that I lost during our marriage.
My name is Betty. I've been working in an office at a small company ever since I graduated from college. Being rather plain looking, I have never been popular with guys, which means few romantic opportunities. Before I knew it, I was in my 30s without a boyfriend. Feeling lonely about the prospect of never getting married, I took a leap of faith and signed up for a dating app. That's how I met and married my husband Daniel. Daniel is 2 years younger than me at 28, handsome and tall. He works in sales at a well-known company. He is honestly way out of my league. Daniel is a kind-hearted man. He said, "The bride should be the star of the wedding," and let me have our ceremony in my hometown. My hometown is in the countryside, so most of Daniel's friends couldn't make it. The only people Daniel invited to the wedding were a few close ones. But Daniel said, "If Betty's happy, then that's good enough for me," and allowed me to invite a lot of my friends to the celebration. Little did I know then who Daniel really was, but I felt blessed being surrounded by many friends at our wedding. That's when the shocking event happened. "Oh, by the way, I quit my job." "What?" That day, when I came home from work, Daniel was playing video games. I thought maybe he got off work early and casually started preparing dinner. I nearly sliced my finger off when he dropped the bombshell. "You quit without discussing with me?" "There's nothing to discuss. We're adults. I can make my own career decisions." Sure, Daniel says it as if it's no big deal, but aren't you supposed to consult your spouse before making such a significant life change? I was shocked by the sudden news, but I felt we had to have a serious talk. Daniel, not taking his eyes off his video game, answered my questions. "Why did you quit your job? Did something bad happen?" "My boss was incompetent. I think there's a better place for me out there." "A better place like, for example?" "I'll figure that out. Man, you're so annoying. Marrying an older woman is like being with mom." This wasn't the first time Daniel had mentioned my age. Each time I would counter, "Then why did you marry me?" And he would casually reply, "Because a complicated woman like Betty needs a stable guy like me," which would spark an argument, so this time I chose not to retort. The main issue at hand was our future lifestyle. It was clear that with Daniel quitting his job, we couldn't maintain our current way of life. "But Daniel, we're also sending money to your parents, remember? Their rent is high. And if you're not working, there's no way my income alone can support both households." This became a concern shortly after Daniel and I got married. Both of Daniel's parents, still in their 50s, had quit their jobs. Their reason was, "Our backs and shoulders hurt. We can't keep working this hard if we want to live a long life." However, that was their choice. It may sound cold, but I thought they should live their lives as they please, so I didn't say anything. The situation changed the month after they quit their jobs. They came to our apartment asking for financial assistance. "We don't have much in savings." "If your parents are struggling, it'll be a problem for you too, Daniel." So we were convinced. And Daniel decided that we would help with their rent and living expenses. In a high-security 4-bedroom apartment close to the station, that's where parents-in-law lives. The rent is through the roof. After they left, cheerful about the financial help, I asked Daniel, "What about our own living expenses?" "Betty can cover our costs. I'm going to give my salary to mom and dad." I wasn't happy. The thought of divorce crossed my mind. "You should consider yourself lucky. A woman over 30 marrying a younger, handsome guy like me, you're already winning." That's what he always said. It made me feel worthless, so I couldn't muster the courage to leave him. If Daniel quits his job, sending money to parents-in-law would be difficult. When I asked about this, he was too engrossed in his video game to pay any attention. "Hey, what about the money for David and Catherine?" Chopping carrots vigorously, I questioned him. Daniel clicked his tongue. "Obviously, Betty will cover that. We're a couple. We're supposed to support each other until I find a suitable job. Betty will hold the fort." He went back to his game. I don't make a lot of money. I was anxious about what the future held, but there was nothing I could do. Life slowly changed. We started draining our savings to help parents-in-law. Daniel, although jobless, did nothing around the house. When I complained, he would say I should have never married an older woman. "You're all so naggy. You don't appreciate having a husband like me." As for parents-in-law, they started complaining about the insufficient amount we were sending.
"So, Betty, you're this age and not making much money. Have you been slacking off?"
"Well, since Daniel used to be the one supporting you, it's high time you step up." For some reason, they admonished me. I started doing some freelance illustrator work after my regular job just to bring in more money. Daniel, meanwhile, showed zero interest in looking for a job he considers suitable for himself. My love for Daniel, who spends his days playing video games, at home or asking me for money to go to the casino, is running thin. When should we get a divorce? Thinking about when to divorce, yet what if the rest of my life is just me, all alone, keeps me from taking the plunge. Then, one day after work, I was greeted by a stranger while I was in the supermarket. Who are you?
You don't remember me, do you? We met at the wedding. I was friends with Daniel. I'm John.
Taking a closer look at John's cheerful face, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh!" John was one of the few friends Daniel had invited to our wedding. Apparently, just off work like me, John in a suit was filling his shopping cart with plenty of groceries. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you. My husband has spoken highly of you.
Well, the thing is, I've actually cut ties with Daniel. I saw you and wondered if you're doing okay, so I thought I'd say hi.
What? I was surprised to hear John speak of his friendship with Daniel in the past tense. I never thought he had actually severed ties. John then proceeded to explain to my astonished self the reason Daniel held our wedding in my hometown wasn't out of kindness. The truth was Daniel had very few friends. Apparently, Daniel spent most of his student life on slot machines and had a habit of borrowing money without paying it back. John was one of Daniel's college friends and he was no exception. He had lent Daniel money but never got repaid. The reason he continued the friendship was because they worked at the same company and John didn't want to rock the boat. Once Daniel quit his job, he immediately reached out to John for more money. That was the last straw for John. He cut off all contact.
Do you know why Daniel was forced to quit his job?
Forced to quit? I heard he left because he didn't get along with his boss.
That's not it. Daniel was fired because they found out he was going to casinos when he was supposed to be on sales calls.
I was shocked. This meant Daniel had been lying to me since the beginning of our marriage. I felt as if the spell that made me believe women over 30 are worthless had finally broken. The feeling of I can't forgive him washed over me like a wave. I thanked John in a trembling voice for telling me the truth and said goodbye. A few days later, I spoke up to Daniel. "Daniel, I quit my job."
What?
Daniel, finally pausing his video game, looked utterly shocked. I put my mobile phone on the table, its screen displaying my banking app. I have pretty much run out of savings since I have been sending money to David and Catherine. We have been bleeding cash. You have also been taking money from me for casinos and games. We're out of money. Daniel let out a voice of despair, saying,
What the heck is this?
Given that our savings had dwindled down to almost nothing, his despair was understandable.
What are we going to do now? How are we supposed to live if you quit your job when we're already low on money?
That's not my problem. Speaking of which, I have loans I need to pay back. Could you maybe find a job quickly, Daniel? I want to take some time off and relax at home.
What?
Isn't it normal for spouses to support each other? It's hard for me to work now that I'm over 30, so now it's Daniel's turn to support me. Daniel, in disbelief, immediately called parents-in-law on the phone. As soon as I told parents-in-law about our situation, they showed up at our house. Parents-in-law began to berate us for not having money, searching the house, suspecting we must have hidden it somewhere. But there was no money to be found.
What's this large withdrawal?
Parents-in-law questioned, to which I answered accurately. That money was used to pay back a loan Daniel had taken from a friend. My own savings weren't enough, so I had to take out a loan from elsewhere to repay Daniel's friend.
Who did you pay back? And why would you even bother paying back a loan now of all times?
I only paid it back because I heard from John that Daniel had a lot of debt. I think it was the right thing to do. The first to start yelling, "Let's divorce," was Daniel, as I calmly explained myself. Even parents-in-law agreed with Daniel's words. They forced me into parents-in-law's cars and took me to the courthouse where I had to file for divorce on the spot.
Glad. I won't have to see your broke old face anymore.
Daniel left after saying that, and I immediately headed to a cafe. John was already waiting there. John, sorry for the trouble. I was able to file for divorce successfully.
Oh, good. I was worried, so it's a relief.
Actually, Daniel was the one who told me he wanted a divorce, but this was all a plan between John and me. Simply saying I wanted to divorce would have led to Daniel and parents-in-law making a fuss as they wouldn't want to let go of me. They're a cash cow. I figured the quickest way to sever ties with Daniel and parents-in-law was to prove I had no value as their cash cow. Fortunately, my side job as an illustrator had started to pay off and I had saved quite a bit. I had this money deposited into a bank account that I kept hidden from Daniel and parents-in-law. It's true that I repaid the money Daniel had borrowed from John, but I had actually given John more money than that amount. It was all part of the plan to lower my bank balance, and John was more than happy to go along with it. After successfully filing for divorce, John met me at the cafe to return the extra money. However, the envelope he handed me contained all the money I had given him. John, this is too much. The money Daniel borrowed belongs to you, doesn't it?
No, I only lent money to Daniel, not to you. When I gave Daniel the money, I had no intention of getting it back. I cut ties with him because I didn't like his attitude afterwards. So, this is all your money. Having a bit more cash can't hurt when you're rebuilding your life.
I could only feel gratitude towards John, who said this with a smile. He had opened my eyes to Daniel's true nature. John had been part of my plan to divorce. I tried to give him some money as a token of my gratitude, but he only accepted enough to cover his coffee at the cafe. After meeting John, I stopped by my former workplace. I had left my hidden bank account card with the CEO for safekeeping. Though my boss understood my situation and regretted my departure, I had no choice but to quit since Daniel knew where I worked and could potentially cause trouble later.
It's been tough, but I wish you all the happiness in the world.
As he said this, my co-workers gifted me a beautiful dress and shoes. Thrown out of my home in just a t-shirt, jeans, and sandals, they had gone shopping for me at a nearby store. It's a gift. I hope you find happiness moving forward. Leaving my wonderful colleagues was hard, but I felt blessed to have worked in such a supportive environment. I decided to go back to my parents' house afterwards. When I was dragged to court from the home I had shared with Daniel, I had packed my work supplies and valuables in a bag so I could immediately start working as a freelance illustrator. Thankfully, my freelance work as an illustrator kept me financially stable. Daniel and his family, on the other hand, weren't so lucky. They couldn't pay the rent for the house they lived in and were evicted. They moved into the house Daniel and I used to share, but they lost that one too when they couldn't pay the rent. Daniel desperately started looking for a new job, but his gap in employment and homelessness made it difficult for him to find one. Currently, it seems they're living in a makeshift shack by a river near their old house. I know this because Daniel reached out to me once. When I answered the call from a public phone, Daniel was crying and told me how sorry he was.
I have realized I can't live without you, Betty. Can we please start over?
You regretted marrying an older woman, didn't you? I'm done being your cash cow. Goodbye. After that call, I never answered another from a public phone. The parents' house is quite a distance away from where Daniel is located in the countryside. Daniel, who doesn't have much money, probably can't afford to make the trip all the way here. The lesson I've learned from my failed marriage is that there's no rush to get married. Whether you're 30 or 40, living the way you want to is what truly matters. For making me realize that, I guess I owe Daniel a tiny bit of thanks.
Before payday as usual, my eldest son, his wife, and their daughter came to visit me at my home. After dinner, they lounged in the living room without helping clean up. As I was about to bring them coffee, I overheard a conversation between my son and his wife through the door.
Ariel, we should take this house for ourselves. Let's put Mom in some facility.
We should make her give it to us while she's still alive. We don't want her getting forgetful.
I'll find a good place for her. Dad apparently left some money, too.
Great, haha. Mother-in-law's like an ATM, huh? Take out money whenever you want.
Exactly. It's good to have rich parents.
Hearing their laughter, I felt like collapsing right there. I was crushed by a mix of humiliation and regret. After crying in the kitchen, rage surged within me. I'll never forgive them. I'll make them regret their words and actions. My name is Molly. I'm 82. I lived alone in this house full of memories with my late husband, whom I was arranged to marry. I enjoyed my solitude, attending theater by train or bus, going to department store events. I led my life at my own pace, even skimping on meals or cleaning on my weary days. But then, an issue arose. My estranged eldest son, who had been out of touch since dropping out of high school, started visiting frequently with his wife and daughter. I didn't even know he was married with a child. Yet they just showed up out of the blue saying,
"We've come to show you our grandchild."
"You must be thrilled," leaving me utterly bewildered. His only goal seemed to be my $7 million inheritance from my father. My father was a company president who owned multiple buildings and apartments in prime locations. After complex legal proceedings, it became mine. That's when my son and his wife started cozying up to me. In retrospect, accepting their first request was probably my mistake. It only escalated from there. Still, it was hard to say no when it was for my granddaughter. They had moved to the same town and were once again at my home during dinner.
Chicken and tomato soup? What a lonely dinner.
My son, who had invited himself over and then complained, helped himself to seconds before broaching a new topic.
"Mom, we want Melody to take ballet and piano lessons."
"Well, why not? My 6-year-old granddaughter has been skillfully picking out the vegetables from her chicken and tomato soup and arranging them on the table. I'm taken aback. But my eldest son and daughter-in-law are ignoring it. I bite my tongue and go back to my own plate, figuring it's not my place to reprimand her if her parents won't.
It costs around $2,000 a year for the recital costumes and private lessons.
"Oh, that's quite a bit. You'll cover it, right, Grandma?" "Excuse me?" My daughter-in-law continues with an air of expectation. "We can't afford that. Everyone else's grandparents cover these costs." Okay, fine. I thought, well, if that's all it is, no big deal. But it didn't stop there. Every time a family event came up, they send me a message. "Give us $2,000 for a theme park overnight trip, $10,000 for a new car, and $5,000 for our grandchild's graduation trip abroad." Knowing the financial situation of my eldest son's family, I've always been generous with gifts for my grandchild, like for school enrollment and Christmas presents. Yet they still act this way. And yet, this is how they act. Meanwhile, my younger son and his wife, both busy with full-time jobs and living in the neighboring state, only manage to visit around Christmas time. Because my sons have never gotten along, my younger son carefully plans his visits to avoid running into his older brother. When they do come, his wife helps out in the kitchen, and he takes on tasks like caring for the plants in the garden or cleaning out the storage room. They've never asked for money. After my husband passed away, when I was at my lowest, they would come to chat or take me out for afternoon tea at a hotel. They always tried to lift my spirits. Feeling guilty for the apparent favoritism, I once apologized to them. They smiled warmly and reassured me.
"We both work part-time and don't have children, so it's no big deal for us."
"I'm more than grateful for your hospitality whenever we visit, mother-in-law." "Is that so? Thank you." In stark contrast, my eldest son's wife constantly makes demands, as if it's my duty to fulfill them. If I show any hesitation, I immediately get a call from my grandchild. "Grandma, please let us make some summer memories. I'm already in middle school. A compact car is too cramped for us. The travel fund and my savings aren't enough." It's hard to say no when pleaded with in such a sweet voice. That's how my eldest wife's son manipulates, making my grandchild call to coax money out of me, time and again. The last straw was a Sweet 16 party that cost $10,000. When I tried to decline due to the exorbitant cost, She exploded over the phone. Don't you care about your only grandchild? You know we don't make much, right? This is a special occasion. Just give us the money without making a fuss. If they're aware that their income is limited, why not take some initiative, like getting regular jobs or even a side gig? They both never quit their jobs. That's why they never get a raise, right? I wanted to say that, but I didn't want to turn it into a mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law showdown, so I just gave them the money. It's not that I mind spending money on my grandchild. It's the entitled attitude from my eldest son and his family that bothers me. Despite constantly asking me for things, my daughter-in-law treats me poorly. As winter was ending, I got a message over the weekend saying, "I want to go to Grandma's house." My grandchild mentioned craving shrimp gratin. Tired but determined, I went shopping and made a special meal for the family. They walked in barely saying hello, made themselves at home on the living room couch, and started using their phones or watching TV. "Could you bring us some snacks?" "Sure, I'll bring some cookies." I questioned why the daughter-in-law couldn't make coffee for her own family, but told myself they were guests and prepared the coffee. This has been the pattern since the grandchild was small. They show up right before payday, eat dinner, take a bath, enjoy some beer or juice and snacks, and leave without cleaning up. They don't help with dishes or say thank you. He doesn't even ask. He just takes loads of stuff every time, from daily necessities to groceries. You'd think he could just ask me, but no, he takes things without saying a word. I've just been letting it go, thinking that protesting would be pointless. But having to repurchase everything from groceries to daily necessities is both cumbersome and a real hassle. "Dinner's ready. Would you like to eat in the living room?" I called out, but no one looked up from their phones.
You're slow. Just bring it already.
Even though I'm inwardly annoyed by my eldest son's domineering attitude, I bring meals for 3 people into the living room. Just as I'm about to head back to the kitchen, my eldest son's wife calls out to me. "Your voice sounds strange, mother-in-law. Do you have a cold?" "Yes, my throat's a bit sore, and I'm feeling sluggish." "Don't get us sick, okay?" my daughter-in-law said, making a face as she started to eat. I was foolish to expect a kind word. And after dinner, they all just sat there, each engrossed in their phones. Not a word of thanks, not a hint of wanting to help clean up. I was surprised at how disappointed I felt. I had still been hoping for something better from my son and his wife. I shuttled between the kitchen and the living room, separated by a sliding door, to put away the dishes for 3 people in the sink. I wash the dishes and make fresh tea for 4. I place my own glass on the dining table and carry the rest to the living room. Just as I'm about to open the sliding door, I hear my eldest son's wife speaking in a displeased tone. "So how much longer is mother-in-law staying in this house?"
What do you mean?
"This place has an old house, but the land is huge, and it's in a great location." "I'd love to live here, Mom. Our current apartment is way too small." "Ew, no way I'm living with an old person."
Look, Ariel, why don't we take the house and put Mom in some facility?
"That works, but only after we make her gift us the house legally. It'll be a problem if she becomes senile." "That's so mean, Mom." "Well, she might agree if you ask her, Melody. And if she chooses the facility now, she can pick one she likes."
So I'll go find a good senior living facility for you. Can't miss out on Grandpa's $700 million inheritance.
"Thank you, huh? Having mother-in-law is like having an ATM. Withdraw cash whenever you want, huh?"
You got it. It's a lifesaver having rich parents.
I felt like collapsing right there as the 3 of them laughed. I wobbled over to the dining table and set down my glass and slumped into a chair. I have to say, I'm pretty spry for 82. My mental age feels like it's in the 50s, and my daily routine involves walking. I shop using public transportation or my bike, and I handle daily chores alone. I was considering making my home more accessible, but who knew my eldest son and his family would plan to take over the house? Soon enough, a sliding door opened, and an angry voice boomed. "Mother-in-law, where's my tea?" "I'm not feeling well. Get it yourself." "Ugh, this is why I can't stand old people. Can't you be hospitable to your guests?" Rolling her eyes and mumbling just loud enough for me to hear, my daughter-in-law left with my son and granddaughter, leaving the living room a mess. Alone again. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I always feel worn out after they visit, but this time was especially draining. Tears flooded my eyes as I remembered their heartless words and actions. How could they think that way? Where did I go wrong raising my eldest son? My chest ached with shame and regret. After shedding some tears, a wave of anger surged within me. I clenched my fists. I won't let them get away with this. They'll regret their actions. Just you wait. A month later, a memorial service was held at the church, marking 10 years since my husband passed away. Afterwards, as relatives dispersed in the parking lot, I told my eldest son and second son and their wives, "I'm remodeling the house." My daughter-in-law then piped up, "Remodeling at your age?" "Yes, I want my son to inherit this home filled with memories of his father. I need to start the gifting process." "Really? Now?" Standing next to her beaming parents, my granddaughter chimes in with a cozy smile. "Grandma, we are thinking about moving into a single-family home soon. Our apartment feels cramped with 3 of us." Even though she's already 20, she still uses a sugary tone when she's asking for something from me. "Is that so?" My eldest son and his wife exchange glances, nodding as if they'd just confirmed something. "By the way, mother-in-law, how's your health? You were bedridden with a cold, right?" Thankful for my daughter-in-law's concern, I managed to smile. "I'm better now, thank you. My recovery was slower than I'd like." "Oh, no, you keep us updated. You want pity because you're living alone at your age, right?" The expression on my younger son's face changes as his older brother's wife smirks and lets her words fly.
"Excuse me, sister-in-law?"
Ignoring her brother-in-law's attempt to stop her, she hops into the car, rolls down the passenger side window, and shouts with a laugh, "Grandma's our piggy bank. From now on, just contact us for major life events, okay? And let us know once you've sorted out the living trust." Standing beside my shocked younger son and his wife, I give in and respond, "All right, understood." Afterwards, while calming down my angered younger son and his wife, they drove me home. For a while, I didn't hear from my older son's family. I began renovating my house as declared and proceeded with various preparations. Then I invited my younger son and his wife over to talk. And surprisingly, my older son's family showed up uninvited.
"Sorry, Mom. I casually mentioned to my brother that you had finished the home renovations, and they insisted on coming."
I shrugged my shoulders at my apologetic younger son. "It's fine. Let's also talk about the living trust while we're at it." My older son's family, particularly his wife, were inexplicably in high spirits. "You have to let us know right away, mother-in-law. It's our house after all." She forcefully pats my back and shoves past me to take a look around. They surveyed the newly styled kitchen and dining area and looked delighted at the spacious living room. The wife gestured and complimented. "The other room still looks outdated, but this living room is amazing, mother-in-law. You actually have good taste. This Nordic interior suits us, right, Melody?" "Yeah, let's replace this old sofa with a branded one and some houseplants." "Oh, my room's upstairs, right?" As my granddaughter started to head upstairs, I stopped her. "Melody, it's rude to wander around someone else's house. You're an adult. You should know that." Taken aback by my uncharacteristically stern tone, she turns and freezes. My older son's wife immediately snaps. "What's the big deal, mother-in-law? This will be our house soon." "Who said I was giving this house to you?"
"What? But Mom."
Their faces crumpled in confusion. "This house will go to my younger son and his wife." Upon hearing this, the younger couple who were sitting on the sofa looked visibly stunned. After a pause, my older son and his family close in to protest. "What? That's absurd."
"The eldest son should get the parents' inheritance."
"The law divides inheritance equally among siblings. Remember, I also received half of your father's inheritance, and you both shared the other half."
Do we? We've long spent it, so I don't remember.
Exactly. That's why I'm giving all the land that I inherited from your father to your younger brother. In that moment, the eldest son's wife showed a devilish expression. You're giving him all the $700 million worth of assets? That's insane.
It's only right that the eldest son should inherit everything.
No, it should be split equally among the siblings, I said coldly, cutting off the eldest couple's rant. Do you really think you get anything after constantly disregarding me? You both are audacious. The couple stood there, mouths agape, pale as ghosts. Clearly, they thought they'd get it all. As for the younger son and his wife, their eyes were wide in surprise.
Mom, are you sure it's all right for me to inherit everything, including the house and the land?
Yes, Mom-in-law, it's kind of overwhelming, honestly. The younger son's wife finally chimed in. Living in an apartment as we do, a house with a garden, feels like a dream. Is it okay if we move in?
I mean, we're glad to help around the house, but won't it disrupt your peace?
Don't worry, I'll be in an assisted living facility. Molly and others seem to have researched it, but I can find my own place, no worries. I took the opportunity to throw a barb at the meddlesome eldest couple. By the way, the renovation reflects your sister-in-law Tamika's taste, which luckily aligns with mine. Wow, it really is a comfortable space. You're giving it to us? I smiled warmly at my younger son and daughter-in-law, who were marveling at the interior. Some of the older rooms, like his study, are still there. Is that all right?
Absolutely, Mom. It's great that places we played in as kids are still here.
We'll take good care of this sofa. It's a vintage piece you bought when you were newlyweds. The warm smiles on their faces warmed my heart, too. This house is filled with memories from our early marriage. I'd be happy if you cherish it. I'll leave the land management to Jesse and Tamika as well. But right next to us, the eldest son's wife screamed. Ah! You've got to be kidding! I won't stand for this! She glared at us, me, my younger son, and his wife. How could you possibly decide to give it all to them and not us? You dangled the idea of a living will, so I thought we'd inherit a lot. She began to yap like an unruly puppy. We even showed you our grandkids' faces from time to time, including a welfare check on you. What a waste of time and gas. The audacity of my eldest son's wife's gesture made even someone as patient as me lose my temper. I slapped her hand away, and she blinked in surprise, staring at me. Nobody asked you to come, so mind your own business. I stared her down, raising my voice. You show up before payday and make me cook dinner. You don't lift a finger, don't say thank you, and you even sneak out a ton of my groceries and household supplies. The nerve of you! My younger son and his wife looked at the eldest son's couple incredulous. You were planning to ship me off to a facility after remodeling the house, weren't you? You've been siphoning money from me for years, using the grandkids as an excuse. Have some shame. She was probably shocked because it was the first time she'd seen me raise my voice. Everyone in the room held their breath, all eyes on me. Even I have the right to choose who gets my assets. There's no way I'm leaving anything to my irresponsible eldest son and his wife. Then my daughter-in-law lifted her head. Her expression had shifted from defiant to desperate. But we're in trouble. We maxed out our credit cards relying on that $7 million in the living trust from you.
And I bought a new car. What are we going to do?
If you were relying on your parents' money, that's your own fault. So you want us to go bankrupt? She clawed at her hair and started to yell hysterically. You're Hollis's mom, right? We're family. We're in trouble, so you should give us money. Fulfill your duty as an ATM. Mom, just stop it. While my grandchild stepped in between my eldest son's wife and me, I quickly pulled out my phone and got to work. I sent an image to a group chat that included the 5 of us who were present. As everyone's phones buzzed in unison, everyone but me checked their screens and simultaneously exclaimed,
What? Ariel?
What? Why did this get sent to me? Is this for real?
Oh my God.
It's no wonder they were shocked. The video showed my daughter-in-law acting in an unthinkable manner. I played the video on my phone for everyone to see. Starting next month, I'll be the store manager, so let's let loose a little. There she was, my eldest son's wife, gleefully standing at the cash register of my own workplace in her uniform. She chugged down a can of beer in one go. Then she began greedily devouring the snacks, sandwiches, and deli items laid out on the counter. "It's fine. I'll pay for it. It's just $25. With a smile, she blurted something into her mobile phone, and the video came to an end. Faced with cold stares from the family, my eldest son's wife offered an awkward excuse, forcing a smile. "It's okay. I was really hungry, and I paid for it."
You're kidding, right? Eating and drinking is prohibited in the store, especially during work hours.
My son was not amused. "It's okay. I only sent it to my partner. But what if he leaks it online?" I shook my head in disbelief. I felt sorry for my son and granddaughter, who were searching the internet with solemn faces. "Don't worry. The original video has already been deleted."
Really? How do you know?
"A friend of Ariel's, who's also a friend of mine, showed it to me. Remember the barbecue we had when Melody was little?" "Oh, yeah." I showed the video to the store manager when I visited. He deleted it right in front of me, saying it was a lesson for Ariel.
And then?
I'm sure you can guess what happened next. "Can you believe this old hag?" The oldest son's wife lunged at me in fury, only to be quickly pulled away by the second son, smoothing out the wrinkles on my collar. I spoke to her with icy detachment. "You're almost 60, aren't you? Can't you tell right from wrong? You don't even think about how you're affecting the family. I'm truly disappointed." "But what are we going to do now? I was supposed to get a pay raise and bonuses as a manager. And we'd be able to buy all the designer stuff we wanted. You've ruined everything." She cried and muttered, to which I replied, "Why not take your complaints to the manager and apologize? Though I doubt you'll be forgiven." "Darn you! You'll regret this." Fuming, she left the house in a huff. The remaining eldest son clung to me, his face pale, his eyes filled with tears.
What should I do? We won't be able to pay our condo rent anymore. Mom, I apologize for the awful things I've said. Please help me out.
"I have no money to give you. This conversation is over. Go home." "Dad, let's give it up." Though his daughter tried to pull him away, he remained as rooted to the floor as if he had grown roots. This time, he turned to his younger brother, desperation in his voice.
Hey, Jesse, even if it's just 1/3, could you share some of Grandpa's land with me? No way. You ignored Mom, and now you dare ask?
Shaking off his brother's grip, the eldest son collapsed onto the floor, his voice weak.
This is bad. I'm heading for bankruptcy.
Come on, Dad. Let's go home. Stop making a scene. Prompted by his daughter, my eldest son left with his shoulders slumped. In that moment, she seemed to have aged significantly. Though my eldest son's wife eventually apologized, it was too late. The opportunity for her to become the store manager was rescinded, and she was forced to resign immediately. According to my eldest son, she had been racking up debt, buying designer clothes and bags on credit cards. To pay off her debts, she not only worked daytime shifts but also took on extra work at night, essentially working around the clock. My eldest son, who had taken out a car loan, assuming he would receive financial help from me, sadly had to sell the car. Even then, they couldn't catch up on repaying her debts and eventually couldn't afford their apartment rent, moving to a rundown apartment instead. My granddaughter, who was the only one leading a decent life, working in retail, ended up having a big fight with her parents over taking on their debts and moved to a different apartment. She had once ridiculed me along with her parents, but she had lost all patience with her mother's excessive shopping and her disturbing workplace behavior. She even blocked calls from both parents when her father, my eldest son, started asking her for money. My eldest son admitted that he has no idea where she is or what she's doing now. There's tension between the couple, and although divorce has been discussed, they've opted for an in-house separation due to the cost of living apart in their cramped apartment. It's a pitiful situation, and it filled me with sympathy. Having transferred my house to my younger son and his wife and completed the gifting process for the land inherited from my father, I moved into an independent living facility for seniors that I had previously applied to. Here, I'm living a relaxed life, growing flowers and watching movies on my computer. I sometimes go shopping with friends I've made here, or have coffee and chats with my younger son and his wife who come to visit. I blocked contact with my eldest son and his wife after their messages begging for money became overwhelming. Now I have no more worries about being exploited as their unpaid housekeeper, or them siphoning off my money. I plan to spend the rest of my life peacefully, watching over my kind-hearted younger son and his wife.